Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I'm 30 years old. Last Tuesday, everything I thought I knew about my life came crashing down when I checked my lottery ticket and saw $47 million staring back at me. My hands trembled, my heart raced, but the excitement quickly turned to fear. I couldn't believe it. I had won. I had won. But as the shock wore off, an even more unsettling realization crept in. I couldn't tell anyone, not my family, not my friends, not even my closest confidant. I had to keep this secret, and I had no idea how it would change me or them. If you've ever found yourself trapped by a decision you regret, or wondered how much you're willing to sacrifice to make things right, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. This is the story of how I fought back, found my strength, and ultimately faced the truth, no matter the cost. Before the lottery, my life was far from glamorous. I grew up in a family where money was always tight, and arguments about bills were as common as the weather. As a child, I remember sitting at the kitchen table, watching my parents shuffle through overdue notices, their brows furrowed with worry. My siblings and I learned early on that asking for extras, a new toy, a trip, even simple treats, was out of the question. We survived, but we rarely thrived. That sense of scarcity shaped me in ways I didn't fully understand until much later. As the middle child, I often felt invisible. My older brother was the golden one, the achiever who always seemed to bring pride to the family. My younger sister, with her bright personality and endless charm, easily drew attention. I existed somewhere in the middle, unnoticed unless I was needed to help or to mediate when tempers flared. I learned to be the peacemaker, the one who sacrificed, the one who never asked for much. My needs felt secondary, so I buried them deep. When I finally reached adulthood, I carried those same patterns with me. I worked hard, but my career was modest. I paid my bills, but I could never save much. I told myself I didn't need luxury, that as long as I could survive, I was fine. Still, deep down, I longed for something more. Not just money, but recognition. I wanted to be seen to matter. Relationships with my family were complicated. On the surface, we appeared close, celebrating holidays, checking in occasionally. But beneath it was tension. My brother always seemed to look down on me, dismissing my achievements as lucky breaks. My sister leaned on me constantly, whether for childcare, errands, or emotional support, often without acknowledging the sacrifices I made. My parents loved me, but their affection often came with strings attached. I was praised when I helped, criticized when I asserted myself. It felt like my role was set in stone, the helper, never the star. So when I won the lottery, it was as if the universe had finally seen me. For once, I wasn't the overlooked one. I held something undeniable, life-changing money, enough to shift the dynamics forever. At first, I thought this win would finally give me the acceptance I'd always craved. Maybe now, my family would see me not as the quiet middle child, but as someone important, someone who mattered. I couldn't have been more wrong. The backstory matters because it explains why I reacted the way I did. My instinct was to share, to please, to prove my worth through generosity. I thought giving would make them love me more, or at least value me differently. I had no idea that my win would expose truths about my family I wasn't ready to face. The day I discovered I had won started like any other. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day where you expect nothing more than routine. I had bought the ticket on a whim the night before, standing in line at the grocery store after a long day at work. I almost didn't buy it. In fact, I laughed at myself as I handed over the few dollars, telling the cashier, well, maybe my luck will change. It was more of a joke than a hope. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee and scrolled through the news, I remembered the ticket tucked inside my purse. With no real expectation, I pulled it out and opened the lottery app. My eyes skimmed the numbers casually at first, and then I froze. The numbers on my ticket matched, one after another, all of them. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank, my hands trembling as I checked and rechecked the numbers. It couldn't be real, but it was. I had just won the lottery. The flood of emotions that followed is impossible to describe. Shock, disbelief, joy, fear, all of it crashing down at once. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again, pacing around my small apartment as though the walls couldn't contain the news. I wanted to scream it to the world, but at the same time, I wanted to hide it forever. Because deep down, even in that first moment, I knew this money was going to change everything. I spent the next few days in a haze, going through the motions of work and life while keeping the secret tucked close to my chest. I read articles about past winners, many of whom had lost everything: friends, family, even their sense of self. I told myself I would be smarter, more careful, but I also couldn't contain the hope that maybe, just maybe, this money would mend old wounds, give me the stability I had always longed for, and allow me to finally step out of the shadow of invisibility. When I finally told my family, I expected excitement. I imagined hugs, congratulations, maybe even pride. Instead, the reactions were muted, complicated, and quickly turned into questions. How much did I win? What would I do with it? Could I help with bills? Could I invest in their dreams? The joy I had felt so deeply began to unravel, replaced by unease. It was as though my win wasn't ours to celebrate. It was theirs to claim. Telling my family about the win was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, and I'll be honest, I didn't plan it well. I gathered everyone at my parents' house one weekend, my heart racing as I rehearsed how to break the news. I thought maybe we'd toast with cheap wine, laugh, and dream about vacations we could all finally take together. I hoped for joy, support, and maybe even pride that I had something wonderful to share. Instead, the room went quiet after I said the words, "I won the lottery." At first, my mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hands as tears welled up. But before I could even finish explaining, my brother leaned forward and asked, "How much?" His voice wasn't curious. It was sharp, calculating. My younger sister squealed with excitement, but her words were less about me and more about what she could now do. "Oh my God, you can help me finally start that business I've been talking about." My father sat silently, his eyes narrowing as if he were doing mental math. That was my first clue. What I thought would be a celebration turned into a negotiation table. Questions flew at me. Would I pay off my brother's debts? Could I buy my parents a bigger house? Could I cover my sister's dream boutique? Each request came faster than the last, layered with expectation and entitlement. No one asked how I felt, what I wanted, or what winning meant to me. The focus shifted immediately to them. I tried to smile through it, nodding, even joking. But inside, my stomach twisted. The joy I had felt days before drained out of me, replaced with unease. I reminded myself they were just shocked, that they'd calm down and see me, not just the money. But as days turned into weeks, the conversations didn't change. My phone buzzed constantly with urgent requests, late-night calls about new business ideas, and guilt-tripping texts when I hesitated. The aftermath wasn't celebration. It was pressure. I became the family's lifeline, the walking bank account they thought they deserved access to. And the hardest part? A small part of me wanted to give in. For years, I had lived in their shadow, overlooked and underestimated. Maybe if I gave them what they wanted, I would finally earn their love. But another part of me whispered that this was the beginning of a very dangerous path. The cracks started to show faster than I expected. At first, it was small things, a family member making a snide remark about how I was lucky, not smart, or another joking in front of friends that they'd soon be set for life thanks to me. Those jokes stung more than I let on, but I brushed them aside. I told myself I was being sensitive, that they didn't mean harm, but soon the comments turned into actions. One evening, my brother showed up at my apartment unannounced. He had a folder full of investment opportunities and a rehearsed pitch about how I could multiply my winnings if I just trusted him. When I hesitated, pointing out the risks, his face hardened. "Don't you trust your own family?" he snapped. That was the first time I realized that in his eyes, my win wasn't mine at all. It was ours. And I was selfish for not handing it over. Then came the betrayal I never expected. My sister, who I had always supported, began spreading rumors to extended family that I had already given her a large sum of money and was withholding from others. I didn't find out until an aunt called, asking why I was being so unfair. The humiliation was crushing. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my reputation within my own family, twisted and manipulated to make me look like the villain. The most painful moment, though, came from my parents. One night over dinner, my father said, almost casually, "We've decided it's best if you put most of the money into a family trust. That way, everyone benefits, and you won't have to carry the burden alone." On the surface, it sounded caring, but I could hear the truth underneath. They didn't trust me with my own win. To them, I was the child again, incapable of making decisions. Only now I happened to be holding millions of dollars. That night I went home and cried until my eyes swelled shut. I wasn't crying about the money. I was crying because I felt like I had lost my family, the people I thought would cheer for me, protect me, and stand by me had turned into competitors, manipulators, and strangers. The turning point wasn't just realizing they wanted my money, it was realizing they were willing to twist love, loyalty, and even honesty to get it. Winning the lottery was supposed to be the happiest chapter of my life, but instead, it felt like being strapped into an emotional roller coaster I never agreed to ride. One moment, I was thrilled at the possibilities, the chance to travel, to build a secure future, to finally breathe without financial stress. The next moment, I was consumed with dread, replaying arguments with my family and wondering how everything had soured so quickly. At night, I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Questions kept circling. Was I selfish for wanting to keep most of the money for myself? Was I heartless for saying no to people I loved? Or was I finally waking up to the fact that real love doesn't come with a price tag? The guilt gnawed at me constantly. I wasn't raised to put myself first, and every refusal felt like a betrayal. Yet every yes felt like I was betraying myself. The stress took a toll on my body, too. My appetite disappeared, I lost weight without trying, and even simple things like cooking dinner or going for a walk felt heavy. Friends noticed I was quieter than usual, but I didn't tell them much. How could I? Most people dream of winning the lottery. How could I explain that my dream had turned into a nightmare of manipulation and mistrust? Still, amidst the chaos, there were small moments of clarity. I started journaling, pouring my thoughts onto paper late at night when I couldn't sleep. Writing became my therapy, my way of making sense of emotions too tangled to speak out loud. I wrote about my anger, my sadness, my longing for acceptance, and my desperate wish that my family could just be happy for me instead of seeing me as a bank account. Therapy soon followed. I hesitated at first, worried it would make me seem weak, but talking to a professional gave me space to breathe. My therapist helped me see that my emotions were valid, that I wasn't selfish for protecting myself, and that boundaries weren't cruel, they were necessary. That realization lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that I deserved peace, even if others disagreed. But the ride didn't stop there. Every family gathering, every phone call, every message became unpredictable. Sometimes they'd act sweet and supportive, almost like before, and I'd think maybe things were healing. Other times, the pressure returned, sharper than ever. It was whiplash, swinging between hope and disappointment. The emotional highs and lows left me exhausted, but they also forced me to grow. The most important shift came when I realized I had a choice. I could either keep being a passenger on this roller coaster, letting others dictate my emotions, or I could take control of my ride. That choice didn't mean I stopped loving my family. It meant I started loving myself enough to protect my heart. And that decision, though painful, became the first step toward reclaiming my peace. The first confrontation came sooner than I expected. My brother, who had been pressing me for weeks about his so-called investment opportunity, finally snapped when I refused again. He came to my apartment unannounced, his face tight with frustration, his words spilling out faster than I could process. "Do you even hear yourself?" he said, pacing my living room. "You're sitting on millions and you can't even help your own brother. After everything I've done for you?" His voice rose with each sentence, and though I tried to keep calm, my heart pounded in my chest. I reminded him that this was my money, that I wanted to be careful, that I didn't owe anyone anything. But to him, it wasn't enough. He accused me of being cold, of forgetting where I came from, of acting superior. In his eyes, I hadn't won the lottery. I had betrayed my family by not handing it over. The next confrontation was with my sister. She showed up in tears, holding her children's hands as if parading them for effect. "Look at them," she said, her voice trembling. "Do you know what it's like to tell your kids they can't have what other kids have when your own sister is living like a queen? Do you know how humiliating that is?" She painted herself as a martyr, suffering while I refused to lift a finger. I tried to reassure her, to explain that I cared, but that money wasn't the way to fix everything. But my words fell flat. She accused me of being heartless, of not loving her children, of putting strangers before my own family. My parents' confrontation was quieter, but cut deeper. Over dinner one evening, my father leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Jennifer," he said, "we're not asking for luxuries. We're asking for what we deserve. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. We gave you everything we could. Isn't it only right that you return the favor now that you can?" My mother nodded, her eyes glistening with disappointment. "Family is about giving back," she added softly. "We're not asking for all of it, just enough to make life comfortable." Their words wrapped around my chest like a vice. They weren't shouting like my siblings, but their guilt was heavier. I left that dinner with a hollow feeling in my stomach, realizing that to them, love was measured in dollar signs. The final confrontation wasn't with family, it was with myself. One sleepless night, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself what I was doing. Why was I bending, explaining, justifying? Why was I allowing their demands to define my sense of worth? I had spent my entire life chasing their approval, and now, even with money in my hands, I still wasn't enough. The harsh truth hit me. No amount of giving would ever fill the void they created in me. The lottery hadn't made me family, it had made me a resource. And unless I stood firm, I would lose not just my money, but my sense of self. That realization became the turning point. The confrontations hurt, they broke me down, but they also built me back up. They forced me to draw boundaries I had never dared to set before. For the first time, I realized that saying no wasn't cruel, it was survival. The turning point came after weeks of emotional tug-of-war. I had tried compromise. I had tried explanations, but nothing seemed to satisfy my family. One evening, after another round of angry texts from my brother and tearful voicemails from my sister, I sat down with a notebook. I wrote a single question at the top of the page. What do I want my life to look like from here on out? At first, I froze. For so long, my identity had been shaped around others. Being the overlooked child, the peacekeeper, the invisible one. But as I stared at the blank page, something shifted. I realized that for the first time in my life, I had the power to write my own story. The money wasn't the answer, but it was the tool. A tool to carve out independence, peace, and purpose. I started by making a list of priorities: financial security, personal growth, and relationships built on love rather than obligation. I decided I would no longer give in to guilt or manipulation. If someone was in my life, it would be because they valued me, not my bank account. That mindset became the filter through which I viewed every interaction. The actual turning point moment happened during a family dinner. My brother brought up his business scheme again, my sister hinted about her mortgage, and my parents mentioned their dream home. But instead of dodging or apologizing, I calmly set down my fork, looked at each of them, and said, "I love you, but I will not be financing your lives. This money is not a family fund, it's mine, and I intend to use it responsibly. If that means you see me as selfish, then so be it." The silence that followed was deafening. My brother's jaw tightened, my sister's eyes filled with tears, and my parents exchanged a look of disbelief. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't explain. I didn't soften the blow. I simply stood my ground. That dinner marked the moment I reclaimed my voice. Walking away from it, I felt lighter. Not because the problem was solved. If anything, the tension grew, but because I had finally stopped betraying myself. The turning point wasn't about winning the lottery. It was about winning back my self-respect. The aftermath of that declaration was messy, and my brother stopped speaking to me for months, only breaking the silence to send bitter messages about how I had abandoned him. My sister painted me as the villain in front of relatives, telling anyone who would listen that I was selfish and heartless. My parents oscillated between cold distance and guilt-laden phone calls, reminding me of their sacrifices. On the outside, it looked like I had torn the family apart, but on the inside, I finally felt free. With the noise of their demands fading, I began to build a life that felt like mine. I hired a financial advisor, not to chase risky ventures or flashy luxuries, but to create stability. I bought a modest home where I felt safe and peaceful, not a mansion that screamed wealth. I allowed myself small joys, a trip I had always dreamed of, classes I had put off, time to breathe without constant worry about bills. These weren't extravagant, but they were mine. The reflection part came slowly, in quiet moments. I thought often about what the lottery had really given me. It wasn't the money, though the security was undeniable. What it had given me was clarity. It revealed who truly loved me and who only loved what I could provide. It forced me to confront my own patterns of seeking approval at the cost of my happiness. It taught me that boundaries weren't walls to shut people out, but gates to protect what mattered most. Over time, I realized I didn't hate my family. I pitied them. Their greed had cost them more than my money. It had cost them a genuine relationship with me. And as painful as that was, it also freed me to seek relationships elsewhere, with friends and communities that valued me for who I was. Looking back, I no longer see the lottery as a curse. It was a test, a brutal one, but one that reshaped my life in ways I desperately needed. It stripped away illusions and left me with truth. And with that truth, I learned to build a life rooted not in what others demanded, but in what I truly deserved. The aftermath wasn't easy. It was lonely at times, and there were moments I questioned myself. But with each step forward, I grew stronger, more confident, more at peace. And in the end, I realized that winning the lottery didn't just expose my family's true colors, it revealed mine too. Beneath the quiet, overlooked daughter was a woman strong enough to choose herself. Looking back, my story isn't just about winning the lottery. It's about what happened afterward, when the people I trusted most revealed who they truly were. Money didn't create those problems. It only magnified what was already there. Unspoken resentments, expectations, and conditional love. At first, I thought I had to choose between family and freedom. But what I learned is that I was really choosing between living for others and finally living for myself. The journey wasn't easy. I cried more than I care to admit. I doubted myself. And there were nights I felt completely alone. But in those hard moments, I discovered something priceless: resilience. I found strength in saying no, peace in setting boundaries, and joy in creating a life built around values rather than demands. For the first time, I understood that self-respect is worth more than any jackpot. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: money can change your circumstances, but it doesn't change people's hearts. It simply shows you who was genuine all along. And while that truth can be painful, it can also be liberating. You may lose some relationships, but you gain clarity, freedom, and the chance to rebuild your life on your own terms. Today, I don't measure wealth in dollars. I measure it in peace of mind, in authentic connections, and in the quiet joy of knowing I'm no longer living under the weight of others' expectations. The lottery didn't just change my bank account, it changed me. It gave me the courage to step out of my old role as the invisible, accommodating daughter and step into the life I was meant to live. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where others try to control your choices, remember my story. Stand firm, trust yourself, protect your boundaries. Because at the end of the day, the greatest fortune you can ever win is the freedom to live as your true self. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my journey. Winning the lottery didn't just change my bank account. It revealed the truth about relationships, trust, and what it really means to stand up for yourself. I never imagined that something so exciting could come with so much pain, but I also never imagined how much strength I'd discover in the process. And maybe that's the lesson. Money can change circumstances, but it shouldn't change who you are or how you value yourself. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when success or good fortune made people around you show their true colors? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. I promise you're not alone, and your voice could help someone else going through the same thing. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more powerful life lessons, and don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Together, we can create a space where honesty, resilience, and real connection matter more than money ever could.